the default and termination provisions of a franchise agreement might seem heavy-handed, it's because the franchisor really needs to protect what they've built, and that's for them, but it's also for all of the franchisees that are part of the system as well.
Welcome to Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast series. Here we talk about all things franchising. What is it all about? Is it for you? How do you find the best one to own? And so much more. Now your host, Tim Parmeter.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast series. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of Fran Coach and your podcast host. Today, we have a guest in the house. Well, the virtual house. And we're going to talk about some of the legalities to consider when looking at a franchise, including the often intimidating franchise disclosure document, or the FDD. We're a week or so away from Halloween, so if we're going to have something scary, this is the perfect time, and the FDD can very definitely come across that way, even though it is mostly a very harmless piece of the process in the grand scheme of things. But once you know what you are dealing with the FDD and the franchise agreement, you kind of realize that it's just a piece of the puzzle, not the piece of the puzzle, or nothing to be scared of. And today's episode is designed to help educate everyone on that topic. But before we tell you that story, we have to, of course, tell you this one. Fran Coach is a national search firm dedicated to working with individuals who are interested in owning a franchise. We are partnered with over 500 of the top franchisors in the country, spanning nearly 60 industries. Our goal is to help clients find the absolute best franchise for them to own. And our goal of the Franchising 101 podcast series is to help educate people on all aspects of franchise ownership. Okay, so that is a bit about us. Now let's get to our guest. So here with us today is Ms. Amanda Dempsey. And Amanda is an attorney and shareholder with Kent Franchise Law Group. Amanda, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for having me.
You are, it's our pleasure to have you join us. And your firm has the words franchise law. So we are going to pummel you with questions about that. So hope you're ready hope you're ready to be on the stand, Amanda. We're going to cross-examine the heck out of you. So first off, the heck with all the franchise law stuff. Who's Amanda? Tell us who the heck we're talking to.
I am ready for that. Sure thing. So, again, my name's Amanda Dempsey. The firm is Kent Franchise Law. We are located, in the Philadelphia metro area. So I'm actually, born and raised in Southern New Jersey, live there now. And our firm is in suburban PA. So we're kind of all over the Philly area. And I've been practicing franchise law for about 10 years now, pretty much almost all of my career. And, so I've been working with the same team for about that time, and, we specialize in all areas of franchise law.
Cool. So let's go a bit to the Wayback Machine here first. So what prompted you to become an attorney?
Yeah, that's a good question. I went to undergrad. I was a psychology major, business minor. Really enjoyed college and did the whole liberal arts thing. Was not really sure kind of where I wanted to end up. But I had a nice kind of friend and mentor, family friend and mentor, who said, okay, well, come work for me then if you don't really know what you want to do. You're 22 and you graduated college, did pretty well. I could use you. And if you like what you're doing here, then, you can work here. So I went to work for a private equity company in Philadelphia. They were a real estate company, a commercial real estate company, in the PE space. And I was working there, and then the bottom fell out of the mortgage industry. So I just started thinking about next steps, and she was an attorney, and she said to me, I think you'll be really good at it. You're doing a great job in the department, and, maybe when you go to school, once you get out, we'll be hiring again, and you come back to work here. And that didn't really happen. They were not really, back to hiring about the time that I graduated 3 years later. So, I just, I started working other jobs, but it was, I'd gone to law school and she was great. I really enjoyed it. There's so much of my psychology background that I use, counseling my clients really every day. So I really love that part of it. And it makes a lot of sense for me. And I knew that I didn't want to be a litigator. That wasn't in my wheelhouse. So I went into corporate law and I had the background in real estate. So I was working, a job as a general corporate practitioner. And, a partner joined our firm that had worked in franchising his whole career and had a, general practice in franchise law. And he threw an M&A deal on my desk on day one and said, "Can you help with this?" And I said, "Sure." And here I am all these years later, working in franchise law still. So.
I think the most people that are in franchising, and for people that are outside of it, and I'm sure you were the same way as me, I didn't know the first thing about franchising before. You just think, oh, franchise, there's McDonald's. Just a tad bit more than that. And you kind of like dumb lucked your way into it. And I love dumb luck because that's kind of how I got into it as well all those years ago, as for me too. So and then like most people, once they get into it, like it's there's so many different pathways. I saw one of our franchise partners earlier today had posted like for some jobs, and they were looking, you think, franchising and franchise owner or being a franchisor, like they were literally looking for marketing help within their brand, right? So you could be rolling out of school with a marketing degree, not know a thing about franchising, and next thing you know, you got a whole career from a marketing standpoint, and you've done that from a legal perspective, and so very, very cool. So the whole goal of our Franchising 101 podcast is to very simply help people get educated on all things about franchising. A big part of the process is the legal side of it. And there's this little document that comes along as folks are vetting out franchises called the Franchise Disclosure Document, or the FDD. And it is, pretty light reading, 200 or so pages of riveting legalese, and can be a little intimidating and a little overwhelming when you first get one of these. So Amanda, kind of just help us understand what the heck is the FDD and why is this thing important to the process?
Sure. So I'm glad you asked, because I think that unfortunately the FTD gets a bit of a bad rap in the franchising space. And I think, like you said, it's largely probably due to the size of them. And I think many people look at them as a bit of a barrier because there's rules around the disclosure and the waiting times and stuff like that. So I would say, you know, while it looks really daunting when you get that large packet of paper delivered to you, to me, it's really important that people review the FDD and all of the attachments, which includes the franchise agreement. So just talk to you a little bit about kind of what they are and why they're useful. So the FDD is actually supposed to be written in plain English, and it's supposed to interpret many parts of the offering that might be more confusing in the franchise agreement, which is the legal document that you sign. So it's a formulaic document. It has 23 items, and each of those items are the same from system to system, with the idea that let's say you were comparing two different business opportunities that you might want to buy, two different franchises. You would put those, could put those two documents side by side and compare the information in item one in one system to the information in item one in the next system. So you could kind of easily compare the information, and it'll help you make a decision basically between the systems that you're looking at. So as I said, the 23 items there are all the same regardless of which brand you're looking at. Obviously, the information in them is different, but the title of each is going to be the same, and the information that's required in each item is going to be the same from system to system. They include information that the FTC believes to be relevant for people to look at when they're going to be buying into a system, right? And I can, go through many things, but it's the business experience of the franchise, who it's owned by, whether there's been any significant relevant litigation or bankruptcy history, the fees that you're going to have to pay at various points throughout the relationship. In some cases, the financial performance of the units that exist, the number of units that exist, the contact information for all the franchisees that are part of the system, right? So all of that is required information. And the goal of it is really to make it like a consumer protection document, right? So for the person that's buying it, this is the information that the franchisor has to provide to you, and they have to provide it in a way that you can understand. And so if you do your homework and you read it, you'll know a lot about the system from having read it. So I think, if you look at it in that way, that it's supposed to be, I look at it like a sales brochure. It's a very long one, but it includes all the information that you would want to know before you decide to go on this new business adventure that you're thinking about. So that's the FDD. The franchise agreement is the legal document that binds you once you decide to purchase it, right? So it's a little bit more difficult to read through because it does have some more, legalese language, generally speaking. But the information matches the information that's in the FDD. So a lot of what I do as an attorney that specializes in franchising is I help people navigate these two documents, right? So, you get a 250-page FDD on your desk and you say, I don't know where to start. And so me, being the person that generally writes these on behalf of my clients, I go through it with people and kind of explain to them certain important parts that, I find to be relevant when you're purchasing, and kind of help them get through the document in a way that makes sense.
Awesome. And I want to talk about kind of what that review looks like for somebody, because we do. Not everybody, but there's a lot of folks that want that legal review to make sure that they're not missing anything, because most people have never seen a franchise disclosure document before or a franchise agreement before. One of the things we'll hear a lot is, especially when somebody's reading the first one, is some of the language in those 23 items can sound a little harsh, but a lot of it is just kind of brand protection, right? I always tell people, like, if you're coming in as a franchise owner and you're going to be the person that messes up everything that they're asking you to do, or ignoring everything they're asking you to do, then some of that harsh language is at you, right? If you're the one that's going to be like the model franchise owner and building this great business for yourself, you don't want some other joker coming in there to mess that up, right? Subway owners can't all of a sudden start selling shoes and I don't know, whatever, right? Like it's sandwiches. We get it. So some of that is, obviously for the franchisor, but some of it is really protection for that person as a new franchise owner, knowing that like they're having that brand consistency in the entire tenure that they're a franchise owner, right? So is that a pretty accurate thing for people to think of as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I do get those comments often that, oh, this FDD and franchise agreement are really drafted to protect the franchisor, and there's not a whole lot in here about what my protections are as the franchisee. And, to a certain extent, that's probably accurate criticism of the documents that generally exist, I would say, that are industry standard. But I think, you're kind of hitting it on the head. The point of all of that, and the reason why there are so many protections for the system, is that it does actually protect the franchisees, because the franchisor creates a system, they create uniformity within that system, and then that becomes, their brand name, what they're known for, right? And it's the franchisor's job to protect that. The way they protect that is to require franchisees to operate within those system standards that they prescribe, and they vary between, as you said, the types of products and services that can be sold from the franchise business. Also, the trademarks, the trade dress, and how they're able to be used, the marketing standards. There's so many different things that play into that brand. That's, it's sandwiches, but it's also, the way that sandwich, the way that it looks inside the Subway, right? Inside the restaurant. So it's all of that is how the franchisor protects its franchisees, and how, it gives them value in creating that uniformity so that, you're hitting that same type of restaurant in maybe 5 different states, and you still get that same feeling when you go in. So that's really the intent behind a lot of those provisions, and why, the default and termination provisions of a franchise agreement might seem heavy-handed. It's because the franchisor really needs to protect what they've built, and that's for them, but it's also for all of the franchisees that are part of the system as well.
Yeah. And if you aren't interested in brand standards and consistency, then franchising probably isn't for you. You need to just go start, Tim and Amanda's sandwich shop and wing it and see how well that works out. Right. So, so somebody gets the FDD, they're kind of narrowing it down. They know what's franchise they think they want to do. They're looking through the agreement, but they're like, this is too much for me. I'd really like somebody to kind of do a review of this. Obviously, that's one of the things you and your firm do. What's maybe kind of give everybody an idea? What's if we set a franchise agreement or FDD review? What are some of the things you're going to do for somebody, and what's kind of the timeline for that?
Yeah, sure. So typical engagement with that assignment generally takes about I would say 5 to 7 business days from when we get started. And what we do is we take that document that was supplied to you by the franchisor. We read it cover to cover, believe it or not. And we provide what I like to call a review letter or a comment letter. And it's generally between, 10, 15 pages. And it hits kind of all of the high points of both the FDD and the franchise agreement. Now, obviously not everything's going to be covered in 15 pages, but generally what we look for are things that are maybe out of the ordinary given our experience in the franchise industry. So we'll definitely highlight those. We'll also highlight things that are very industry standard, but that we've found have been points of contention over the years for our clients. So, areas where our clients, despite having read everything, are confused or surprised when those things come up, right? So we're going to be highlighting some of those industry standard things that are maybe not what people expect at the outset, and just so that people are aware that these are some things that you're going to need to comply with, and things that you might not have thought about. And then the other thing I really try to do is I try to highlight some of the things in the franchise agreement that I think don't really get a whole lot of attention in the FDD. So they're in the franchise agreement, maybe they're in, a late section, people stop reading at that point, but they're really important things. And so I try to make sure that I highlight those for prospects so that they're not really just looking at the happy things and glossing over some of the harder things. So that's kind of what the review letter looks like. And we will, during that process, make recommendations of, if we think there are things that they should ask for clarity on, or if there are things that we think they should request some changes from the franchisor or some additional support or something like that. We will make those recommendations in the comment letter. And then, from there, we'll, after the client has had a chance to review our letter, if they have any questions about any specific points, or depending on the industry, there may be some industry specific things that they want to discuss with us. We'll set up some calls with the client to make sure that all their questions are answered.
It's all, most of these things, as you mentioned, they all look the same. It's all regulated by the FTC. There's only so much variance that can be in these. But again, when you're thinking about, I'm going to invest, whatever the amount of money is, it's that person's money that they are not missing anything. And to really being able to give people that peace of mind is awesome. So
yeah, that's absolutely the goal. I mean, there are some things that, maybe may be considered risky for one person, and the other person, knows about them and doesn't care, so
right.
It's really everybody's individual risk tolerance. And, sometimes, there are times when, there's a new concept falls on my desk, and, I'm telling the client, this is a brand new concept that's not really proven. And they're saying to me, oh, no, I'm fine with that. I got that. And I'm, that's, they want to get in at the ground floor, and they,
right.
They have a passion for it, and that's fine. I'm not there to tell them to do it or not do it. It's just, my job is to make them aware of things that maybe are somewhat risky or somewhat different in the system than others. And just, let them make the decision about, what's best for them and how they can kind of, be their own boss.
Right. Exactly. No, very cool. So the other side of this that I know you and your firm work on is for the franchisors or for a business that is thinking about, man, I think I've got a great concept. I would like to turn that into a franchise, right? So, let's be honest, the majority of what we do with Fran Coach and our podcast is more helping people become franchise owners. But we've had a handful of folks, one of which I'm pretty darn sure you've worked with, that have been podcast listeners are like, I got a cool business. I want to turn it into a franchise. Now what? So if somebody's out there that's kind of in that position, thinking about becoming a franchise, or what are some tips you might say, okay, now you've got to begin to formulate your franchise disclosure document, your franchise agreements. Talk about some of the things that you help folks with on that end.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of work with emerging franchise brands. And we represent brands. So I should say we represent brands really of all sizes. So we represent emerging franchise brands, but a large part of what we do every day is working with middle market clients, throughout the US and also internationally. So we have tons of experience doing that. And I actually really love working with emerging brands because just the spirit of a new entrepreneur kind of walking through the door and just showing me their cool new idea and how it's going to be the next big thing. I mean, there's just something so electric about that. So it's one of kind of the more fun things that I do as part of our job. But yeah, so I mean, what we do for those clients is, people will come to us and, they may have multiple company owned units or they may just have one. But they want to turn their business into a franchise. So, I mean, we explain to them basically the very first step is just explain to them the parameters of the model and the things that they're going to have to comply with. As I'm sure there are states that require pre-registration of the FDD. So we make sure that we go over those sales requirements with them right off the bat so that they're not, saying things they shouldn't say to leads that they might be getting. Because believe it or not, most people come to us because they've gotten some questions about, is this business a franchise? I'd like to buy one or something like that. So we really do have to hit those sales related questions right at the top so that, everyone's aware that they shouldn't be making certain, sales related disclosures from the beginning until their FDD is complete. And then we go through what I like to call a discovery process with them. We sit down with a bunch of questionnaires that ask tons and tons of questions about all the information that's required in the FDD. And so we help them basically either compile that information, either they may have it and they give it to us, or we help them kind of put it together based upon the, historical data that's available from their existing locations. And we build out that FDD and that franchise agreement that's specific for them. So that process can take, depending on how far along the client is. I mean, I would say probably the fastest it can be done is maybe 2 weeks to 30 days, but most of them take somewhere between 30 and 90 days to finish. And it's really just dependent on how much information is already really available for us and how much we have to kind of put together. So that's really the first step from the legal perspective. It's just to get the documents in order. And I find that process really gets the client thinking about the system as a whole, right? And how they want to run the system if they don't already have a system in place. Because some of them do, even though it may just be for company-owned units, they already have some type of system that they're following. So it's really a big discovery process for them. And we help them through that based upon, some of basically our experience over the years and what it's for their clients. And then, we really do a deep dive on their business and what's been working for them. And then how we systemize that, how we replicate that with the units that they're going to sell. So that's also a big part of the process is just seeing how we're going to be able to replicate the success they already have.
It's amazing how much goes into taking, Tim's sandwich shop and turn it into Tim's franchise. And I think they're the biggest thing just from that little overview, which I don't know, you maybe touched on 0.1% of everything that you're really going to do for
Yep.
those franchisors as they're getting launched. The absolute biggest thing, and I know you have, I've seen it before, where new businesses turn it into a franchise. They're like, no, I can do it. Right. I took that one business law class in college 25 years ago. I can do my own FD. I mean, I saw one maybe about 6 months ago, and it was somebody that was wanted to kind of partner with us on being one of the brands that we work with. And I looked through their FDD, and I'm telling you, there were multiple typos, and I don't mean like legal typos. I mean things that my 8-year-old would have caught. Right. And,
Yeah.
and, well, who helped you? Oh, no, we did it ourselves. I'm like, oh, geez. So yeah, don't, like, if you're out there and thinking about like trying to put this all together, don't, even if you technically could and had the skill set, I would still tell you don't, because of just what you talked about. There's so many things that you don't even know to think of yet. You don't even know are things, and to have an expert like yourself walking them through, hey, you've got a system. Yeah, well, that's, how do we replicate that? How do we have all the training in place to, again, have those brand standards when all of a sudden you have 100 locations in 23 states? How are you going to handle that? And being able to kind of walk them through that is huge. So
Yeah. I'll also say, like, my husband is an attorney, and he would never try to draft an FDD.
Oh my gosh, both of you with two in the same house?
Yeah. He's a litigator, so we do a lot of different things. But it's like we know enough that we can, like, talk shop at the end of the day, but not enough to kind of fight with each other about how we did things. So it's good. It's a good balance. But I mean, and I only say that just to illustrate that it's really a specific skill set. There are things in the FTC rule that, unless you've read it 1,000 times, I wouldn't suggest you try to interpret on your own. The first few that I ever attempted to draft were heavily supervised by an experienced attorney who taught me, how to do it. Right. So it's not like I went to law school and I came out with this knowledge. Like, it's practiced over years and years and years and honed. And part of that is that the FTC rule, it requires you to include so much. And if you don't have that item in your system, for example, like if you don't have a POS system, it requires a negative disclosure, right? That, oh, we don't have this. So a lot of the ones I get that are kind of like, I like to call them homegrown FTDs, they don't, they may include the information that they think they need to include, but they're not including, a negative disclosure, for example. So there's just so many nuances to it. And if I hadn't been doing it for the number of years that I have, I wouldn't, I wouldn't attempt it without some supervision. And I honestly remember doing the very first one, and it was extremely overwhelming, even with somebody, from somebody that had a law degree and had been practicing as a corporate practitioner for several years. The very first one that I did took me, probably 6 months to get completely right, with the supervision of somebody that had been doing it for a lot of years. So yeah, it's just a special skill set. And, I'm not here to kind of pump up what I do, but it's just going to save you so much time and energy to engage professionals in that, and then other parts of the process also, and certainly in what you do, Tim, and other people that work in our industry. It's very niche, and it's, people are here to help.
I'll definitely, pump you up for what you do and how you do it, because you've been fantastic to work with, and just like like a real human being behind all of this too, which I think is refreshing for people, because this can be a little scary. But always, you talk about the specialization. It's not uncommon for somebody that we're working with to go, oh, well, no, we've got a family attorney, or I've got this. I'm like, no. Right. It's like, I was going to use the analogy of, imagine you're going through a divorce and you're like, hey, I had this accident attorney I used last year. That guy was really good. I'll use them for the divorce. Dude, you're going to end up with the shirt on your back and nothing else, because that attorney is accident attorney, not divorce. You need a franchise attorney when you're looking at franchise stuff, whether it's you're about to become a franchisee or you're trying to become a franchisor. You need basically everybody listen, you need Amanda, right? So, so I know how busy you are, and I greatly appreciate your time and talking us through this a little bit and kind of making it a little less scary and intimidating and overwhelming. But I'm not gonna let you off the hook just yet. So I guess last thing, is there maybe anything we haven't talked about that you would just want people to know when you're thinking of kind of the legal side in the franchising world?
Yeah, well, I do think, just, for anybody that's listening, certainly, I think that at times they are, they're not wanting to reach out to attorneys or auditors or accountants or those type of business advisors off the bat because it seems overwhelming or expensive or something like that. And so, I mean, one of my very favorite things about the franchise industry is really how much people are there to help each other, even competitors. Are really there to kind of share. That to me was kind of one of the biggest kind of gems of the pandemic, was just seeing how people really pulled together and to help each other kind of get through this. And that's really kind of, to me, really, it's just kind of the way the industry is generally. And it was really highlighted during that time. So, I mean, certainly I think that if somebody's looking to get into the industry, whether they're, a seasoned entrepreneur that wants to buy, a pack of franchises, or if they are just buying their first unit because they want to be their own boss, please do reach out to someone in the industry to just get some advice, because I think that, personally for me, I think that it can be a great step for someone who has a passion. I really believe in franchising as a method for creating business ownership for people that, need maybe some extra support, right? So you're not out there on your own, just, trying to figure everything out. You have this kind of blueprint to work off of and this support system to help you. But I have seen so many people purchase franchises really without doing their homework, and they just find out too late that it just wasn't the right fit for them. And unfortunately, there might have been a different system that was the right fit for them, or maybe a different concept that they're really passionate about that they should have gone with, right? So there's just so many options out there in the industry. So if you're considering it as a path to business ownership, which is one that I really actually, wholeheartedly support, find somebody, whether it's me or Tim or somebody else in the industry, that can help you kind of select one that's going to work for you and that meets your goals. Because I guarantee you, there's so many out there that, they involve different levels of involvement, different types of businesses, different industry verticals. There's just so many options. And I just hate to see it when people pick the wrong one for whatever reason, so it makes sense certainly to kind of know thyself and go after the one that fits with you. And there's just many people out there that can kind of help you identify that. So that's really kind of my 2 cents on it. I personally believe in the model, and I think it's great for communities, people, huge opportunities. But I think, unfortunately, the downside of it sometimes comes when it's just really not a great fit. So just find your fit, I guess maybe that's my biggest advice.
No, without question, that is it's not one size fits all. And what's going to be the best fit for person one is going to be the worst fit for person two. So without question, on that. So I appreciate you sharing that too, because I always think that's probably our biggest mantra we try to get across to people is this is the best thing for you. That's the key. So Amanda, I cannot thank you enough for the time you spent with us today and talking us through everything. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. It's great talking to you always. And thanks for having me.
You are welcome. And for all of our loyal podcast listeners, we hope the Franchising 101 series continues to provide insight into the amazing possibilities that can be achieved as a franchise owner. Be sure to follow us wherever you listen to your podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to check out the Franchising 101 website, which is literally franchising101podcast.net, or our main site, which is francoach.net. And if you'd like to learn more about becoming a franchise owner, send us a message on one of those 2 sites. Let's set up a brief introductory call. There's never any fee for our service, so we encourage you to take that first step today to create your better tomorrow. Thanks everybody for listening, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks for listening to Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast, where our ultimate goal is to help educate you on all things franchising so you can create your better tomorrow.